Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first viewer listen of the day. Of course, a big thank you to all of you for who have joined our Locked On Cougars Insider group. If you guys have not done so already, I'm sharing insider tidbits, what I'm observing at BYU football practices, what I'm hearing about the Cougars. We're having one-on-one chats via text message in game and just in everyday life. If you'd like to have that access, click the link in the show notes below. It's a hyperlink. It's whether you're listening or watching this. It's a 14-day free trial, just $5 a month afterwards. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU as a member of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, BYU basketball they officially got underway with their 30 practice training camp, for lack of a better term. Now they have 40 plus days in the lead up to the start of the season, but you're allowed to have 30 practices. Now, they're supposed to obviously have some breaks in there. That's just built in to the schedule. BYU also have a Midnight Madness event that's coming up. Gosh, you're calling it Cougar Madness. It's not Midnight Madness anymore. That's coming up next week on October 3rd. BYU's annual blue and white game is extremely early this year, October 9th. So get ready, folks. We're going to be watching this version of BYU basketball in very quick fashion. But the more important thing is Kevin Young is now formally getting ready for his first ever foray into coaching this BYU basketball team. He has made a major impact on BYU. NIL is obviously a topic du jour. BYU recruiting at an extremely high level since he arrived on campus, bringing in guys like Egor Demin, as well as Cannon Catchings, Elijah Crawford, just on down the line. Just think about the guys BYU's landed. Brody Kozlowski, in most off seasons for BYU basketball, would have been like the talisman of the recruiting class. And seemingly he's just another guy. And he's an incredible talent. He's a 4-star talent in his own right. They have brought in a ton of talent to this roster. They've also added transfers like Keba Keita to the mix. So I think Keba figures to be BYU starting 5-man in this lineup. But I really am excited to see what this BYU basketball team ends up morphing into. Is it going to be a positionless basketball team? I think that in his heart of hearts, that's what Kevin Young aspires for this squad to be. Now, that's much easier said than done because certain guys' skill sets lend themselves to being better, maybe playing on the front court, on the wing, having the ball in the hand, having the ball in their hands, playing off the ball. Everybody is different, but the goal for Kevin Young and his staff is to find the right roles for all these players, get them on the same page, and then let them go out there and allow their natural talent to take over. This is one of, if not the most talented top to bottom rosters BYU basketball has ever assembled. I'm dead serious. In over 100 years of BYU basketball, you'd be hard pressed to find a better collection of talent on paper than this team. Now, once again, Kevin Young and his staff, and he's assembled an all-star staff, I think, are going to have the task of going out there, A, identifying which guys are going to fit what roles best, B, narrow it down to, man, if it goes more than a 10-man rotation, I will be absolutely floored. And that's going to leave, I think, some talented guys having to be bench guys and having to play the good teammate where they're relegated to sitting there and cheering their teammates on while not seeing the court very often. I don't think that rotation really gets narrowed down truly until BYU gets into conference play. And obviously the Big 12 is just a major bear trap out there. 20 games in the Big 12 this year, and I saw a projection just the other day that BYU's 10th of the 16 teams in the Big 12, and funny enough that 10th spot might get them a 5 or a 6 seed if they. It is incredible to consider the caliber, the talent, the depth overall of the Big 12 conference. But BYU's got 40, let's say 40 days, just round number. They've got 40 days from now to get it right. And obviously then they're off and rolling with the regular season. Now you get a handful. It's probably, I think it's 13 non-conference games to get yourselves tuned up for conference play. And it's going to be important, I think, those 13 games for Kevin Young to iron out wrinkles. There's inevitably going to be stuff about this BYU roster, no matter how talented it is, that is going to have to iron itself out. There may be an issue of a log jam at one position where you're like, hey, I've got 3 or 4 guys here I all think need to hit the court and be on the court together. Can you play them in different formats? Can you change the lineup? Can you stratify them in terms of minutes with the rotation to get them on the court and have them have success? Or is it going to be the situation where you have a lack of shooting with one lineup and you're trying to balance that with a lineup that may be more defensive oriented and kind of your stopper group? There are so many of these things that are going to be discovered in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead for this BYU basketball team. But Kevin Young has got the reputation of being a guy who can figure it out. There's a reason why he was so highly and widely respected in basketball circles when it came to the NBA. His background is as a primarily an offensive coach, but he relates with players on a deeper level. That's why guys like Devin Booker, Chris Paul, I think Joel Embiid has been mentioned, all just talk about this guy with glowing reviews. He is a guy who connects with his players, and I think that connection, especially at the collegiate level, could go a really, really long way to helping BYU break through, and even this first year under Kevin Young. These are young men, many of them 18 years old, who have never been away from home for long stretches of time. Obviously, there's some veteran players on this unit, guys like Trevin Knell, who are, I think Trevin might be 24 or 25 at this point. But then you have also the dichotomy of a guy like Elijah Crawford or Brody Kozlowski, who are 18 years old. So there's a really, really interesting mix of ages, guys from overseas, guys from Utah, guys from elsewhere in the United States. And the amalgamation of all of that has to come together and work. If it doesn't work, well, guess what? BYU is going to find themselves in a world of hurt. Sorry to use the alliteration and rhyme there. I didn't mean to. But Kevin Young's job, it's straightforward. You've got to go out there and win. This is not a team with all the momentum this program has built over this offseason that can afford to fall flat on its face this season. If it does it, it will be considered to be one of the laughing stocks of the league. And I don't have a problem saying that because think about it. There's a lot of people out there, national writers who are very much in the know, who say that BYU is the odds-on favorite right now to land AJ Dybantsa in next year's recruiting cycle. He is considered to be a generational talent, a true one-and-done guy who's going to go to the NBA and is supposed to be a franchise icon for whoever drafts him in the NBA. To get him on BYU campus to be a member of the BYU basketball program would be absolutely remarkable. But he's not just going to do it out of the goodness of his heart. He is looking for a program where he can thrive, he can star, and he can show off exactly what he is as a player. And that's, fingers crossed, where BYU's at. But what do you have to do to land him in the end? You got to win. You got to prove you can have a program that's going to set him up for success. If cannon catching, Egor, Demin, whoever it is on this BYU roster ends up realizing their potential and can jump to the NBA, that's only going to embolden a guy like AJ Dybantsa to buck a lot of the national trends and pick little BYU. But you got to go out and prove it on the court, and we're just underway on what will be a months-long journey with KYU, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the podcast. A big thank you, as always, for your guys' support. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to catch up with Cam Stewart, the host of Locked On Baylor. Crossover editions, we talk about the matchup between the Bears and the Cougars, the Baptists versus the Mormons, however you want to term it. Looking forward to catching up with him. Always good time to chop it up with one of my fellow Locked On hosts. So we'll have that for you guys on tomorrow's podcast. But as always, thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view or listen of the day. And obviously a big thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on Locked On Cougars.